Hello and welcome to another episode of the Electric Norwegian. I'm Mats. Today we're having a travel in the Tesla Model S. It's a 2014 model. We're at 95%. We were apparently at 100 and then the car just preheated and fell to 95 and then started charging again, strangely. And then when I preheated it, so I don't really know. Yeah, we're gonna get over 7%, which is of course just stupid. We're not going to get over 7%. If I have to stop and charge on the way, then I do that. The estimate is now 43 kilometers of range on the energy graph. I hope we can get more than that. I hope we can get closer to 300. Then we only need a short stop. I have brand new winter tires. Non-Kong something or other ice. They were more than expensive enough, even though they're supposed to be a budget option. We're now at 79%. We've traveled 21.5 kilometers since we left home. Had an average of 252 watt-hours per kilometer, which isn't really that bad considering the atrocious road conditions. Climate is on 21 degrees. The CT I think is on 1. The energy graph estimates around 200 kilometers of range, which gives us about 240 kilometers. I think we can do about 250, maybe 300. The computer estimates we're gonna go to Arendal, which is 190 kilometers away, and charge. We're gonna arrive there with 16%. There's chargers quite literally everywhere along the route, so I'm not worried about not finding a charger. Now we're at the charger. We've been charging for 10 minutes, maybe 5. We're charging at 56 kilowatt. It started up at 78, so but it's an old S. That's just how it is. Atrocious weather outside. It's snowing heavily. There's something very wrong with this car. I don't know exactly what it is yet. But when I brake hard, the whole car pulls to the left, and the brake pedal kind of just vanish. So I don't know if there's a leak of the brake fluid or some calipers, or it hasn't been like this before. And I I got some new winter tires fitted yesterday, so well, I just have to have this looked into when I get home. Now we're gonna just stay here a little bit more. I'm gonna buy eat some food and then. Good morning, everybody. Now we're on day 2. We're going back home again. We're going to hopefully to Sarpsborg. There's not the best conditions, is it? Had a great night's sleep. Good to see some old relatives again. It's about 4 hours back home, probably more. This thing, well, it could have charged a bit quicker, but of course it had a cold battery over the night. It will heat up during the day. But so far, the car is brilliant to drive. Sound system is very good. New tires. It's always nice so far. That's where we are then. We arrived with 2%. Just started supercharging. So I turned the climate control back on. The charge port had frozen, so I had to use a tool and just give it a little bit of push, getting under it. And the road conditions are getting better. But still, look at these consumption numbers though. We have done almost 150 kilometers, 214 watt hours. I think that's decently okay. This is an old car and all that stuff. So from here on up, I think we can do higher speeds, and we're gonna get home eventually. For a while now, we have 34%. It estimates 125 kilometers. That's probably not correct because speeds are going to be higher from now on, so we're going to stay a little bit longer, I think. We charged at 64 kilowatt. The car has added 23 kilowatt hours since I parked. Been on side, had a few phone calls, been on the toilet, that sort of things. So charging wise, it does charge a little bit slow, but it's free, so I can sort of live with it. Apart from that, I would imagine the range of this thing fully charged. When I left home, I could have gone straight down to where I was going near Kristiansand in one charge, but then I wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. Would have arrived with 6% or something. So I choose therefore to charge a little bit on the supercharger on the way down, just to be able to get to the nearest supercharger going home again. So if I had destination charging, I wouldn't need to do that. Next time I'll go down there. They probably will have their own wall box because they have an old Renault Zoe. So maybe I can borrow that one for a few hours and just get some juice in. Let's get it up to 40%, and then I think we'll be probably fine. Now we can properly pile on the speed again. So it's around 0 degrees. We're doing 116 kilometers now. We're on speedo. Roads are good. They're wet, but there's no snow or ice or anything. We're running we're at 41%. We left the charger with 52. We have an average since we left the charger 250 watt hours, which I think is perfectly alright. So the only thing is the heater here is a little bit on off. It's never cold, but if you put your hand to the air vents, you can feel them blowing cold air, but it gets a little bit cold there sometimes. But of course that might be, now I need to run defog because it tends to fog down a little bit. That's a problem with the old S's sometimes. New tires, even though they're cheap non-Kong tires, they feel secure. Then that's sort of everything I want from a tire. You don't feel like you don't have any grip or anything. So I'm very happy I had them, as you can see earlier. The biggest delayer today, if I can use that description, is not necessarily my charging stops. It's the conditions earlier today. Got the first charge up, were probably a little bit. There was car charged slow because it was cold battery, but it didn't have time or energy to precondition enough. And now it went a lot faster. It has a relatively flat charge curve until you hit 50 or a bit over 50%, then it falls below 50 kilowatt hours, and then below 50 kilowatt I mean, and then it sort of goes a little bit too slow. But if you go and you eat and do stuff, then it doesn't really matter. So it's not quite as bad to go long distances with as I thought. And now it's winter. It would be, this has been summer, I'd probably have consistently higher charge speeds. At least a little bit higher. So yeah, there's that. The energy graph estimates running average of around 220 watt hours and 126 remaining kilometers. We have 88 kilometers left home, so it's gonna be fine. The car's become a bit quieter too with the new tires. It's not a Rolls Royce, but yeah, it's better. Of course, the old ones were worn down and really should have been changed anyway. So it's two important things on a car: the tires and the brakes. Sat here on the ferry. One of you commented that you wanted me to talk about the strike, the Tesla strike, and it started in Sweden. Now I'm a member of a union myself. For unionizing, I'm for striking as a tool, and that workers should have a voice that can't just be barrel rolled over with the big capital and the big bosses and the big corporations. Because if you look at it historically, there's a reason why we have unions, and we need them. And what happened? Some Tesla workers in Sweden went to strike, which is their prerogative and their right to do. And then the union in Sweden, IF Metal, began rolling out their support. They had some meetings with Tesla. Tesla said, we don't know what Tesla said, but we know that they didn't want a deal. They pay their people very good, and it's I'm sure there's a hard. Tesla is one of those places that's very hard. There's a demanding place to be. Either you live with that or you don't, and that's how it is. But they pay their people well, and if you enjoy that place, then you will have a great working environment and good colleagues. Now, because Tesla didn't want a collective deal, the strike in Sweden got evolved, and they got the electricians union and other unions on their side as a sympathy matter. And then they got the Danish unions with them, and now they have got the Norwegian unions with them as well. And in fact, in my town in Sarpsborg, the service center there, they say we're gonna go to strike there if this isn't resolved within the 20th of December, I think, something like that. In the beginning I thought, okay, this is great. If the workers want to unionize, they should be able to unionize, and they should be able to because this collective deal is about more than just payment. It's about some other goods as well, and parental leave and a lot of other things. Now I don't know how Tesla handles this internally, because it's internally in the company. But what pissed me off was I hear people say, yeah, well, you need to understand that there's no more than 10 people that can go to strike because we're afraid of losing their jobs and all of that stuff. Because it's a big American company, and it's this kind of Silicon Valley attitude that we're our own bosses and we can do it. I don't want to be told how to do my business. That's kind of bullshit thing. That's what Elon is running, and that's what other companies are running. I mean, Jeff Bezos is no better. I'm not saying Tesla is perfect, and I'm not saying it's all unicorns and sunflowers. I'm sure it isn't, but it's not perfect anywhere. What happened was that instead of, say they striked and shut down a lot of the service centers. Okay, some of us would be angry and we wouldn't get the parts and stuff, but that you would hit Tesla, the company. Now, what I did instead was shut down every other function, every function that could pertain to have anything to do with Tesla, the company: transport, parts, availability, registration plate availability, everything, including service and upkeep of the superchargers. And that's what's kind of broke it for me, because in Norway you sort of couldn't get away with doing that because we have such good charging networks anyway. We've been doing this so long. We're so far ahead of everybody else. In the rural parts of Sweden, where Mr. Swedish man has bought himself a Toyota BZ4X or a Hyundai Kona, whatever, an EV, and the only quick charger around the area where he drives is a supercharger. He isn't a Tesla customer, he's not affiliated with Tesla, but he uses the supercharger network because that's the only thing he have. Well, if that then stops working and the union say, well, you know, Tesla, blah, blah, yeah, well, then focus on the company. Don't focus on the innocent third persons. And then this feels more and more like a war situation now, where the union are being angry and acting like a grumpy 5-year-old that don't get attention and don't get what they want, and then thus they go to war and they use their considerable political power and clout to go after Tesla. Now, if Tesla would unionize, get with the program and get out of this stupid Silicon Valley bubble that has nothing to do in Europe at all, because it doesn't, that would be beautiful. I would love that. But as it is, they pay their people properly, and their people, their Tesla's employees, clearly don't want this, at least not very many of them. Is it worth just putting everything in motion to win this battle? There's 1,000 small and middle-sized companies around in Scandinavia and Germany and other places that is not unionized. There's no law that you have to be unionized. You should be, and we've built our whole work kind of the payment, and we have all this social goods and the vacations and stuff that's come through the unions over the last 100 years. Then at least it has to come from the bottom. It has to come from the workers up demanding a union. Now it comes from the union and down, and that's the wrong way of doing this. I'm sorry, I ranted enough. Now we're gonna get off the ferry, get home, and then look at some numbers. So here we are then, back home. Well, we've done around 500 kilometers totally, give or take, a bit over that probably. And well, since I was sadly I forgot to zero out one of the trip meters in the car, but I did zero it out a bit after the first charge in the morning. And it showed the 249.8, say 250 kilometers. We've used around 110 kilowatts probably on this trip. 225 watt hours per kilometer of consumption since then. So total in this trip we've used maybe to 30 to 35 maybe. The conditions have been less than optimal, to put it that way. It's been around zero, around give or take a little bit, plus minus 2 degrees. Since the last charge, one we charged at Telemarksporten, we driven 111 kilometers and had an average consumption of 241. And most of that driving, apart from the ferry, where the car of course was stationary, has been on the motorway at motorway speeds. Most of the driving before that was slower. It wasn't the motorway, but it was snow and snow plows, and you just couldn't go faster than 70, 80, because, well, conditions. Charge-wise, first charge of the day were a bit slow, second charge of the day were quicker. It's not a Model 3, it's not a 90 pack, it's not a 100 pack, it's not a new Tesla, and it definitely isn't 800 volt Kia Hyundai. And it was a little bit tedious in the morning, but the second charge stop was okay. It was actually decently quick enough. And if you have something to do, if you stop and eat after 3 hours in the car, then you don't really notice it very much. Comfort is very good. It's a nice car to travel in this. You sit, the seats are good, sound system is good, lights are crap, but we all know that. Space, it's not a problem with space in this car. Brakes were sometimes a bit iffy. The brake pedal, the feel of it is back again now, so I don't know what happened. Yesterday, when you pushed it, you felt it sort of didn't have any resistance in it in the beginning, and that's not nice. It's not supposed to be like that. But all in all, a pleasant experience, a nice drive. So it shows that even an old electric car there's still life in the old horse yet. And it can easily do around 300 kilometers, close to 300 kilometers at least in the winter. And summer-wise, I would imagine I would get 400 out of it, probably. At least in Norwegian lower speed limits. You don't need a new car to have a car with decent range. It just shows more how far ahead of everybody else Tesla was 10 years ago than now. You can get anything that do this kind of speeds. Yoshi still delivers, and I arrived home with 10%. One thing I forgot to mention: first charge stop of the day, I arrived with 3%. Second one, I arrived with 2%. Now this is an almost 10-year-old car with, as far as I know, on the original battery. Normally, I'd be terrified of driving something that low. If it was new, no problem, because it's new. I know the buffer at the top and the buffer at the bottom are there, if you need to use them. Never do, but if you need to use them. Now, I kept an eye on the estimated percentage at arrival on the trip computer, and then I used the energy graph to look at the estimated remaining range and looked at the remaining distance to the charger, and if one was higher than the other, then you're in the green. But that doesn't help if the BMS don't know where the bottom of the battery is when 0 is 0. And sometimes old batteries can be a little bit messed up, and they can be uncertain, and they haven't been driven within a big range, and have been so you can suddenly hit the bottom without knowing it. I can be told one thing about the BMS, but reality is something else. Now, Björn Nyland spoken about it several times, and I was thinking, okay, in the car you have your speedometer and stuff, and there you get a power limit, a yellow dotted line, at least in the old S's. In the 3 and stuff, you just see you don't hit full power when you plant the throttle. Now, if that power limit declines steadily, controlled, and relatively linear, you're in the green. The BMS knows what it's doing. If it doesn't, if it suddenly starts declining quickly, or it behaves erratically, then you should stop and find the nearest charger very quickly indeed, because then BMS might be uncalibrated or something else. But anyway, that's what I did, and it all worked out just fine. But I was careful, and there's so many chargers on that road that there was plenty of outs if I needed one. That's it. Thank you for watching. Do remember to like, comment, subscribe, and maybe share this video if you know someone else who are a bit curious about how old electric cars are to live with. And until then, I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.